for this incredible crew. So I'm going to try and do justice to introduce Rennae, who is, again, an absolute legend. She hails from Sydney, Australia, and she was known for her worldwide success in doubles. Of course, she's won multiple Grand Slam double titles, including an Australian Open, which I think is really fun, the US Open, and two Wimbledon titles, as well as a mixed doubles title at the Australian Open and the US Open. Rennae's currently in Australia. She is there for Australian Open. And if you don't know, she's quite a celebrity and TV host personality. So there were so many aspects of her focus on sport, focus on performance, focus on career coaching and leadership that I felt like was the perfect way to kick off the year. So Rennae, it's such a pleasure to have you with us today. And cannot wait to hear about all your stories and how you handle high pressure situations. You're consistently improving incredibly known world players to like get better at their craft, as well as you doing it yourself. So I'll hand it off to Rennae. And again, Rennae is happy to take questions. If you have questions for her as she's talking through her content, please throw it in the chat. I will moderate and bring it in at appropriate times. But other than that, over to you, Rennae. Cannot wait to hear all about your awesome stories.
Well, thank you, Akshay. I appreciate it. And it was a real pleasure for me to get the call and say, would you do this? And I said, absolutely. First of all, welcome everybody. Welcome to 2025. It's a new year. And well done in being here in and of itself. That means that you're here because you want to improve on something, whether it be in your life, whether it be in your work, whether it be working with your workmates. It doesn't matter. So 2025 is a new year. And interestingly enough, was one of the conversations I had last year was that we have a really interesting thing in tennis is that every single year, players have to defend points from the year before. So it's a 12-month rotation of points. So you could be number one in the world and 12 months later, you could be 60 in the world quite easily if you don't stay and maintain how well you played the year before. So for example, I'll give you a quick example. Jannik Sinner, Sabalenka won the Australian Open last year. It's coming up in 2 weeks' time. It'll be the winner will again win. If Jannik Sinner happens to lose in the first round, for example, he will lose 2,000 points. And someone can jump over him that maybe didn't do so well at the Australian Open last year. And let's say Carlos Alcaraz, he didn't even play the Australian Open last year. So he's the number 2 player in the world, 3 player in the world. He could jump over the top of him quite easily, depending on how many points Jannik had from the year before. So the reason I tell you that story, and some of you don't even know tennis, is that even the best players in the world have to maintain and get better every single year to at least maintain where they're at or get better than the one before. And all tennis players and everyone that's great at what they do in businesses, you're always looking to improve what you're doing or get better because you have competition. And so the reason tennis can correlate to real life is just that. It's every single year trying to climb the ladder to be better and better. So one of the things that I wanted to talk to you guys about today is asking yourself right now, what is it about you in your work life or business life, in business or in your relationships, in your family, and your friendships, that's a destructive behavior or a destructive default, as I like to call it. So when I played, for example, I used to get reactive. I was a little bit angry on the court. You see the John McEnroe smashing their rackets, and sometimes even Novak Djokovic, he loses it sometimes. It's how can you change those destructive defaults, whether it be not being able to talk to your boss really well, not being able to talk to the person that you work with on a project. How do you react to them? What's your mood? Do you get quiet? Are you aloof? Do you get angry? Are you lazy? Do you not prepare? There's all these things that don't make you better at what you're trying to do. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about today was a thing called pattern interrupt. And to do that, you have to be able to have some cues. And so first of all, admitting what you don't do well, what is your destructive default, is the first thing that you must do. So I sort of ask you as you're sitting here, what do I do that's not great? right? What do I do that doesn't get me further? And sometimes it's excuse making as well. Plenty of tennis players, plenty of athletes, a lot of people do those things. So today I want you to sort of take ownership on what the things are that you do that are destructive in your work life, relationships, as a tennis player, as an athlete, all the things. Because the greats in business and in tennis always pick the hard path. And by the hard path, I mean, they sort of know what their destructive default is early. Sometimes they get a little bit later and then they discover it and they say, how can I change that? And so I want to just give you a quick story about me, for example, at the Australian Open. So I won my first Grand Slam at the Australian Open. I was 29 years of age, which is quite old in an athlete's life, in a tennis life. And I know that seems crazy to a lot of you because some people aren't even getting set in their actual businesses or lives or professions until they're in their late 20s after coming out of college and finding a job and all that sort of stuff. For me, it was at 29, which, as I said, was sort of oldish. But I had been told so many times through the years, if you want to be better, this is how you have to be. And I really struggled with sort of taking that information in and using it to my best of my abilities. So when I had reached a Grand Slam final already, but I was a kid. I didn't really understand sort of the ups and downs of a professional life and handling the pressure. And I was sort of just running off of talent and ability. And then at the Australian Open at 29, playing in front of my friends and family and a packed house of 15, 16, 17,000 people, I was told before this match, the way to get through it for you, Rennae, is to not be negative. It's to be as positive and as calm as you can be. And for 2.5 hours, I did that. And thankfully, I was able to get the result I wanted. And it was the hardest thing for me to do that I've ever done at that point in my career. It was to stay calm in the biggest of moments. And I wanted so badly to self-destruct at times because that was my natural inclination. My doubles partner, on the other hand, was a type of person that would like to dig a hole and rather hide in it. And I'm sure there's some people out there going, that's kind of sort of more me, right? I was a build the mound, stand up the top and make everyone see me. And she was a person that would like to dig a hole. There were times where that worked because we're the yin and yang, but often the negatives of what we were doing was self-destructive and were not good in the end result. So the reason I tell you this is because, and in one of the things that I discussed before I wanted to talk about this is I never wanted to have the what if. So if there's anything that I can impart to you today, it's don't ever wake up in 20 years' time and say, what if? So my what if would have been, what if I had behaved better? What if I'd had better composure? What if I wasn't so negative? I didn't want to wake up in 20 years' time and say, what if? And because that's regret, right? So the reason I ask you to be really honest with yourself about what it is that is your self and destructive default is that I don't want you to have any regrets in 10, 15 years. I want you to be able to wake up and say, that was truly my best. Now, if I hadn't won the match, you say, well, would you have felt that way? At the time, no. I would have said, well, nothing worked. I did everything that I could and it still didn't work. And I went into the boss and I asked him politely for a raise. I went to my co-worker. I never put anything on them. I was super positive about everything and we still didn't get the results. That's not the answer. The answer is that was truly my best that day. And so I might have had to admit, maybe I just wasn't good enough. But not being good enough doesn't mean that wasn't your best. It just means that the person that day was better than you. And in your work environment, if you did your best, if you prepared the best, if your partner maybe let you down a little bit, that's not on you. What's on you is what did you do that day? And, you know, in a tennis environment, for me, for example, in doubles, if I'd done everything right and my partner had self-destructed, again, that's not on me. So I wanted to always be a person that woke up and I tried to think about in 20 years' time, would I wake up and have any regrets? And sure, there are certain regrets that I had before. I chose the more difficult path. And those are little regrets that I have. But I was so lucky that in this instance, to win my first Grand Slam, I did get the result I wanted, but I also learned from that occasion. I learned for me to be more successful, I had to choose the harder path for me, which was being positive, not being reactive, looking at the positive, not the negative, not looking behind, not saying, oh, what if I'd done that earlier? No, what was more important was being in the absolute present and trying to be the best I could be. So I think about the things that I've learned. I learned from that moment and won that match that I took on to winning every other final except the last one I played in, because I'd learned those lessons. And my career path after that was so much more successful because I learned the hard path, which was not easy. And so we're going to get more into that when we ask questions. But when I think about, my next afterlife after tennis and going into coaching, going into television, it's like when I think about having the opportunity to coach someone like Serena Williams in her last US Open, you probably think, how can someone like me who hadn't had the success on a singles court that she had? Because again, the greats want to get better every single day. So no matter what your achievements are in your business, you have to ask yourself the question, what's the next step for me? How can I get better? Who can I improve by listening to? And again, like I start this today by saying, you're here. So that's already a start. You're already trying to learn one thing. And you might grab one thing from me. And my old coach used to always say to me, Rennae, I could tell you 45,000 things. If you pick 2 things that make you better, I've done my job. So those are the things that I wanted to express to you today, is that being here and someone like Serena Williams asking me the questions of how I can get better shows you that everybody that wants to be great always asks the question of how can I be better, and asking the questions of the people that they trust and they respect. And so one of the things that really helped me get to where I got to, and that I really try and teach to my players and hopefully to you today, is the 3 C's. And so those three C's are composure, clarity, and commitment. So if you think about a stressful environment, like a tennis match, playing in front of 20,000 people, millions of people watching on TV, or putting a presentation together, or going to your boss, asking the questions for a raise, going to your co-worker about maybe trying to improve the work that you're doing, you have to have these 3 things. And if you have these 3 things, life will be so much better for you. So I start with composure, for example. We all know what it's like to deal with somebody that you don't really like, or you're going to have to talk to somebody you don't really like, or maybe it's a job that you don't really like to do. Or for me in that moment, it was losing a point and having it be so important for me, is that you have to be composed in how you want to approach it. And by composure, you have to be breathing. You have to be very, very sure of not worrying about the past. You have to be very much in the present. And then you can have clarity. And when you have clarity, you can get what you want out of that, right? So you're composed, you've taken that breath in. And for me as a tennis player, I've let go of the past, I'm fully present, and then I'm clear about what I want to do in that next point, for example. So a tennis analogy or a sport analogy is, I want to serve the ball there, I want to look for this shot there, and this is how I want to approach this point. Now, every point is different. You're playing an opponent that can hit the ball back differently. You might not hit the serve perfectly, so you have to adjust. But being composed and being clear about that can help you get to the end result. So once you do those 2 things and you're composed and you're calm about how you want to approach where you're going, you have clarity about what it is you want to speak about, talk about, present, work on, and then you commit to it, right? Then you say to yourself, I've done the work. Again, going back to, are you lazy? Are you not prepared? All of those things matter as well. That's all layers of a cake. But composure, clarity, and then you commit to the job. You commit to it full-heartedly. You don't waft around the office and start talking to somebody. You go and you do your job. Because as a tennis player, for example, if you're composed and then you're clear about what you want to do, then you commit to it. Now, not all the time it works. You might lose the point. You might not get the job. You might not get the whatever you are pursuing in your business career. You might not get the contract, but as long as you know that you've done the work, that you're composed, clear, and committed to it, then you should often reap a lot more benefits than you have, let's say, in the past, right? So those things to me are super important to improve on your daily life. Asking yourself on a daily basis when you go home, did I try those things? Did I get better at something every single day? And it could be just not reacting that one time. That one time could be the difference maker of you actually getting further in your career. And so, you know, as a coach now, I'm coaching here in Adelaide, for example. My player who I've just started working with 5 days ago, first day, little lazy, little not committed to what she was trying to do. And in 4 days, her ability now to change that is just from being told, right? So again, it's willingness to listen. And if Serena Williams is willing to listen to someone like me who has not the career that she had, then there's every single one of you out there has the ability to get better. Because when you think about arguably the greatest player of all time in women's tennis, maybe even in the history of tennis, is willing to learn from someone. And when I told her about the 3 C's, her first thing to me was, wow, that's great. Can I write that down? And so when you think about she's about to walk out to the US Open and play her last US Open, probably her 25th, writing down something to improve on herself getting better means that all of you today can get better at something if you're willing to learn and listen. Like I was back at the Australian Open, I finally decided to hear and implement and commit to the things that I knew were going to make me a better tennis player. And so, and in the end, a better person, because I became less reactive. So, you know, you can meditate, you can do better breathing exercises. You can ask yourself, could I have handled that situation better? Could I have committed? Should I have spoken up more? So just the most important thing, you know, at the start of this conversation is, what is your destructive default? And once you learn that, then you can start changing it, and be willing to change it is above all the most important thing. And for me, finding joy in what you do on a daily basis and having passion, I actually have passion tattooed on my arm, because I always want to have passion for what I do. And if you have passion for what you do, you tend to have joy and you tend to have success. If you're in a work environment that you're not really passionate about and you have something else, my other mantra is say yes. Always say yes to the things that you feel are going to improve your life. And you know, a switch for me in doing television, last story that I'll tell you, is I was asked to do a hosting of an Amazon show 2 years ago. Now me, I'm an expert, right? I'm not a TV host. I'm on TV all the time. I have to react to questions that are asked to me, but I'm not a host. That's a learned communication thing that a lot of people do at school, etc. So there was somebody that really believed that I could do that, and he asked me to do it and host my own show. My first reaction was, oh, sure, great, but I don't know if I can do that. So I'm just telling you, I'm sure there's times where people have thought that you could do something in your career that could be a little bit bigger and better, and you've sort of, oh, could I do that? My answer to you is say yes. Say yes to it. Be afraid. Be scared. I was petrified the first couple of days. I had sleepless nights going into doing this job with Amazon. I have never felt that way really for a long time. Obviously, learning to be a tennis player, going into big finals, but I was prepared for that. I was prepared, which is another thing that you should learn. Always be prepared, because it helps you not have the anxiety. But this I wasn't super prepared for. And I was lucky that I had a week of trial, not because they needed it to give, the truck needed more production help. So I got a week of practice of live TV. So that really did help me. But after the week, I was like, I got this. So I always tell people, say yes to everything. If it's passionate for you, if you're interested in it, if you're bored about what else you're doing, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to step out and do that next thing. You know, detach from the outcome. A lot of people have this issue of like, but what if it doesn't work? No what ifs, no regrets, say yes, and have the composure, clarity, and commitment to do the thing that you really want to do. And I know you're not here today to win Wimbledon. I know you're not here to win the Australian Open, but you're here to be better. And so that in and of itself is a step forward in just your everyday life, your everyday work. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, find a mentor, find somebody you look up to. That's what changed my life. I had an ex-tennis player that I really looked up to who told me things that resonated better with me sometimes than even my coaches. So if you have a mentor out there, if you have somebody that you really trust and really believe in, call them on the phone. If they're good people, which I hope you're looking up to someone who's a good person, they have no problem helping you get to where you want to be in your life. So, you know, that's a little bit of what I want to talk to you about today. It's just about having that ability to want to be better every single day and finding somehow a way to get better. And you've already started by being here today. So I really sort of want to open up more to the questions, because I know there was a bunch of questions that were sent in today to ask about this, the magic mix. Now you know it. But I want you to get to the Q&As, and I want to be able to answer a lot of the questions for you about dealing with pressure or dealing with anything. Maybe it's your destructive default I could help you with today.
Amazing, Rennae. What a great kickoff. Thank you so much. And yes, we do have some questions. I'll kick it off, but I know this is absolutely not a shy crew. So if you have any questions, just throw it in the
Good.
chat. Yeah, absolutely. And then I'll bring it in. So first, I kind of wanted to kick off with what was that pivotal moment that really changed your approach, specifically when it came to professional tennis? And if you're able to give us like some sidelines and stories for us to like form analogies to what we're looking at here, that would be great, Rennae. So let's kick it off with that.
Yeah. Okay. So I sort of already talked about a little bit at the Australian Open, but one of the things that I also talk about quite a lot with my players is being honest. And I say to them, how are you feeling today? And you have to be honest with me, because I can't help you if you're not honest. And so it's being honest about the destructive defaults, first of all. And I really do believe, for me, the honesty about my reactions, about being negative, and that Australian Open moment for me is such a clarity moment, because it was so hard for me to not be demonstrative, to not be an excuse maker. And, you know, just for example, on match point, my very first match point at the Australian Open, if you know, it's just in sports, I had the most unlucky thing happen to me that could possibly happen, like a ball that was about to come right to my volley. And that was my strength, was particularly my backhand volley. The ball was exactly where I wanted it to be to win my very first Grand Slam in front of my family, 20,000 people. This is the moment I've waited for my whole life. And the ball hit the net and went over my racket and went in by about this much. So for me, in my older days, I would have reacted to that and shown the whole world how unlucky I was. Oh my God, that moment it's gone. What if we don't win this game? I'm going to lose this match. All the negative, right? All the demonstrative negative behavior. Instead, my only goal that day was to be positive and calm. And I looked at my partner and I said, okay, let's get another one. Get me another one. At the time, I was probably thinking, who am I? Like, who is this person? We got another match point, another dramatic thing happened. We lost the game. And I sat down at the changeover. And normally, particularly with my partner, who was my best friend, we would be very negative. Oh, I can't believe that happened. And she was a little bit negative that moment, but I had to serve out the match. So I had to be the one who had to be really positive in that moment. And my first words to her were, we made them earn that game. So right then and there, I had the pattern interrupt. I didn't go with the negative. I went with the positive about what is the next step now? What's the most important thing is to win this match. And so the way to do that, I had to be positive. Now, that was so very hard for me to do at that moment. And it sounds crazy to people, like, well, of course you're going to do the right thing. No, not when you know your default destruction is to be negative. And it's not a fault. It's just your default fault, what you've grown up with, you know, a negative parent, a negative coach, somebody who's hard on you. You tend to take that with you through your life, right? And so if that's why I asked the question, be really honest with yourself about what it is that you do under pressure. And that can help you. And in that moment, I was going to be positive. And I stepped out on the court and there was no negativity around me. And I was able to serve out the match. And as I said, if I'd lost the match, I still would have been able to live with myself because I know that I gave it everything that day and I just wasn't good enough. And that's okay. But having the what if and the regret, I did not want to have. And I'm so thankful for that moment because it made me obviously get what I wanted to out of that, which was a slam victory, and my career like took off after that. But those are the things that are really, really important. And that was important for me at that moment. And I was able to then pass that on to others. And I try and tell people the past of what didn't work. And I try and say to players now, this did not work for me. And I'm trying to impart that on you. And the greatest question that was ever asked to me was, what would I tell my 20-year-old self? And I told my 20-year-old self, please listen to your elders because they're trying to help you avoid the pitfalls that you are going to keep making in your career if you don't want to excel. That's why I say, if you have a mentor that you really trust and believe in, listen to them and trust it because they trust you enough to be able to help you. And that's one thing that I really think is really important for people in any endeavor. And it doesn't matter what age you are, you can get better at something. And that for me was the moment.
Love it. That is such a powerful story because you did not just have to put yourself in the positive mindset, you also had to support your teammate for you to
Yes.
approach the rest of the match uh, not reactively and with a negative
Yes.
mindset.
Yes.
Antonio has a very related question. I want to talk about destructive defaults that you talked about. Rennae, his question's really around do you have any tactics or strategies to help identify what are those destructive behaviors? And do you have any strategies on how you identified them? What can we do to get better at it so that we can try to really get to the root cause versus do something more patch fixy?
Well, a lot of us go to therapy. So, some people know already. It's kind of like the saying of you want to change something, you don't keep doing the same thing over and over and over. If you have somebody that you really trust, sit down with them and ask them the questions. Little tennis story again for me, and it matters to me because these were pivotal moments in my life. But, my doubles partner who I won the Australian Open with, when we played our Wimbledon final, we didn't have a coach with us at the time. And we sat down with each other and said, what do we need to do to get better? And, she was very honest with me about a certain thing I did on the court. And I was therefore very open and honest with her about what she could do better on the court as well. And we held each other accountable. So if you have a workmate or a boss or somebody that you really trust to say, okay, I really want to get better at this. You have to be willing to listen. And then therefore you have to be able to implement those things. And you have to be honest with yourself. That's why I say today, write down the things that you know about yourself that you are not good at and try and push that envelope a little bit. Try and pick that really hard path because we all get to a point in the road where it's like the easy way or the hard way. And often the hard way is the best way. So you have to identify those things in yourself and you have to ask the question to the person that you maybe trust the most. And if you don't trust anybody at work, trust somebody in your family, trust a friend to say, I want to get better at my life. And I've had friends sit down with me and say, I think you could probably get better at X and Y. And if you really want to be a better friend, a better workmate, a better worker, then those are the things that you have to be truly, truly honest with yourself about. And at the end of the day, write it down. Write down something you want to get better at. It might be reactive. It might be being aloof. It might be being a little bit lazy. It might not be being prepared. It might be running late for work all the time, or maybe staying out too late and then not being prepared. Then there's a plethora of things that you know that you could probably change about yourself to get the reward you want. And if you're okay with status quo, there's nothing that anybody else can do about it. But if you're truly willing to get better, you have to ask the question of yourself and maybe somebody that you trust to help you get to that next level. And I think that's very, very, very important. And if you don't like your job or you hate it, stop whinging about it, stop complaining about it, and do something you love and really commit to that. And that is a scary proposition sometimes to someone, especially, in the work environment, particularly in the United States, where you might have a 401k, you might have your insurance paid for. There's a lot of reasons to not leave a job. But if you're not happy and you really have passion for something else and you trust what someone's telling you how to get there, then do it.
Amazing. Rennae, I'd love to switch gears a little bit and get a little bit more of your wisdom on, uh, yes, let's say we commit to something and we want to go and get the thing that we really want to get. How do you maintain peak performance when pressure is also surmounting to a level that is really, really demanding? So how do you keep composure when you're committing and the road gets really, really hard? I'd love to hear some of your strategies or tactics on that.
Well, I think the key is it's all about you. What is your bar that you want to get to and then jump over, right? So you can't be afraid to set that bar. And I'm very honest as a coach, for example, I'm very honest about telling my player, if I really believe they can be top 10, I tell them that. And I tell them the reasons why I feel that. So I'm very honest with them about that. A little thing also is that the subconscious mind and the conscious mind are very interesting, right? So if your subconscious mind is saying, oh yeah, you can get that job, you can be the CEO, and then so your conscious mind is saying, yeah, you can do all these things, and then your subconscious mind is like, no, you can't. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You haven't done the right thing. You don't know the right people. They're not together. And in a tennis world, for example, as an athlete, my very first Grand Slam, my subconscious and conscious minds weren't together. My subconscious mind was saying, you're not really ready. You're not really good enough. These opponents are much better than you. And my conscious mind was like, yes, I can do this. I can do this. And it wasn't until the Australian Open where my conscious and subconscious minds were actually together saying, now there was no guarantee I was going to win, but they were together in thinking I really could win, right? So you have to also have an honest conversation about your destructive defaults and behaviors, but also what is your subconscious mind? How much is that controlling your actual conscious mind? How much is that little person on your shoulder telling you you can't achieve something? Why? You have to ask the question, why? Why? And that's why I say to a player, what's going on today? And I need you to be honest, because then we can talk about it. And are your conscious and subconscious minds together? Like my first Grand Slam and my last Grand Slam, I played the Williams sisters at Wimbledon. My subconscious mind and conscious mind were like, I don't know if I can win this match. I'm good enough to beat them anymore. I was 38. It was 39. I was old in tennis terms. They had just won the singles. They were in the final again. So there was this war in my own mind going on, right? Of, am I still good enough? And that was the only time that happened, except for the first time. So again, it's just being honest about what are your destructive behaviors? How can you get better at them? Write them down. Did you get better at them that day? Write them down. Say, I want to do this today better. And if you do, those are small little incremental improvements and they become habitual positive habits, right? And so for me, it was also being honest about that. I needed to ask myself, or maybe even talk to my partner and say, I don't know if we're good enough. I need you to help me to think and give me the reasons why we are. And that's very different for me because I was pretty assured of myself on the tennis court in those environments. And I needed to ask myself the question of why. Yes, they were good, but I played a lot of good players that I never thought I was going to lose to. It wasn't guaranteed that I was going to do it, but I never doubted myself. So ask the question of yourself, why am I doubting myself? Why do I not think I'm capable of being the CMO, the CEO, the COO? Why am I not trusting in that of myself? And then if you are, and you again find a mentor that can help you understand the reasons, and maybe it's the defaults, maybe those are hurting you. That's the way to help you improve and get better and think about it every day. What can I get better at every single day? And it can be small, but those things, as I say, are building a house. Are the walls up? Is the foundation down? Is the roof on? Do we have the door yet? You keep building your foundation in your business and in your life. And eventually, hopefully, you've got this beautiful home.
Excellent. Rennae, I'm going to bring in a question from Bryce, who asked this question to us before. And I thought it's very relevant because one, you're very used to handling high pressure, like throw you on the spot sort of situations. You even told us your Amazon TV show story. Um, I mean, you've been put on the spot many times, and I'm sure this group here also has to like on the spot have some conversations, do presentations, so on and so forth. What are some of your tips? Or how have you maintained not to misspeak, ramble, like say the things? Like, do you have any strategies and tips and tricks for us to like really deliver the impact or the message that we really want to deliver on the spot, specifically in high pressure situations?
Well, first of all, no one's perfect, ever. I don't know if you ever saw Roger Federer's commencement speech he did at, I think it was Dartmouth, where he said, I've lost more matches than I won. No one's perfect. So first of all, don't expect yourself to be perfect. Second of all, I think if you're doing a speech, for example, or you are put on that, nobody knows what you were supposed to say. Okay, so if you have oh, I didn't say that line, and then it messes you up, you like go with it, because they didn't know what you were supposed to say. They didn't know what was necessarily on your speech. They didn't know necessarily what was on your presentation. And so it's kind of along the lines of fake it until you make it. But also in certain situations, it's like, don't get flustered. That's why the composure, clarity, commitment part comes in. Because if you're composed in a stressful environment, you're clear about what you want to say. And then if you mess up, you're composed, you're committed to getting on to the next point, right? So, and then you commit to that, right? And you go, and then I have done things where I've like gotten off stage and I'm like, oh, I forgot to say this. Or if I'm, I do a lot of live interviews on TV, and I ruminate over it after, and I'm like, I forgot to ask that question, and I should have asked that better, and blah. And I like we all are, we're very, very hard on ourselves, right? But also you'll have someone come and go, oh, that was a great interview. Oh, that was a great presentation. And you're like, oh. So sometimes you just have to not be so hard on yourself, and you have to get to the point where if you are composed, have clarity, and you commit, and you're prepared, and you have done everything you know you can that day to be better, that's all you can ask of yourself. So be a little bit easier on yourself. Don't be so hard, and really sit down and look and be like, did they really know that I was supposed to say that? No, they just know what I said. And so as long as you have presented or done it in a way, I talk about this all the time with people that I can't speak live. I have such a hard time. First of all, take your time. That's really important. Don't say ums and ah. It's better to be quiet. It's better to stop, process, and then say what you want to say instead of so a lot of people that have, fear of talking publicly, take your time, breathe. They don't know what you were supposed to say. And that is something that I really, really, really believe in. You can ruminate it over it later. You can like, oh, I should have said it this way. But in the end, they didn't know that. So don't harp on it.
Renee, this resonates so much with me because I'm going to hop off the Zoom call and feel this exact same way.
But no one knows what you were supposed to say,
There you
or
go.
how you
Yes.
say it, or the questions you were supposed to be asked.
Yep, that is absolutely true. Thank you for that, Renee. Joel had an excellent question as well. When you were transitioning out of professional tennis, how did you decide what to do next?
Well, I guess I'm in a very unique situation of being a professional athlete. Your time is limited, right? You know that your retirement age could be 30, 35, or 40. Sometimes some players play into their 40s. Some are done at 29. I think it's very important if you think about that maybe you're stuck in the job you are good at, but maybe you want to go into something else. That's why I always say yes and have the ability, have the want and the passion to do something else. For me, it was always, I got asked a question at 19, what I wanted to do when I finished playing tennis. And I thought that was quite presumptuous of the person that asked it of me, because I was like, I'm 18, like I'm just becoming a professional tennis player, like give me time. But I did think about it, and I thought, and the guy that asked it to me was a TV presenter. And I said to him, maybe I'll do what you do. I think I'd be decent at that. because I was quite analytical as a tennis player. And so most people that are quite analytical become good analysts, obviously. And so it is also what I can do as a coach. I feel like I was quite emotional as a player, but I was very tactful in my tennis. So I think it's knowing what you're good at. I'm really a big believer in pick your lane, right? If you're not good at something, get somebody else to do it. If you are terrible financially, get somebody else to do that for you. Get someone else in your business to be able to handle that. Pick the best of that world to help you. If you're not a great communicator, maybe there's somebody in your company that can communicate better than you and you trust them. But for me, I thought that I'm quite an easy speaker to people in public. I always felt I was quite a good analyst. So I thought, hey, I think I can get into television. And I just believed that I could be good at it. And I worked all throughout my tennis career. So whenever I was asked, here's a perfect example of saying yes. Whenever I was asked to do a tennis match, and I was very, very focused on my tennis career. Some people might say, well, you weren't really focused on your tennis career if you were doing television. No, I was very focused on my tennis and I put the time in. But I knew there was an afterlife, right? I knew that my career was going to be ending. So I always invested in the things that I knew I could be good at after. So, you might be doing a job right now that you feel like is just a stepping stone for your next job or your next career. Take advantage of that. If you're in a situation that maybe there's a job you want to do or a career or a company you want to start, and there's someone in your current company that can teach you all the ins and outs, because that's not your lane, learn so much from them. And so for me, I took every opportunity I could to do a tennis match when I was asked, whether it be ESPN. And these were the things that happened to me in my career. It was ABC Australia, which is like kind of like, a PBS in Australia or an NPR. They asked me to, yep. Eurosport in Europe. Would you do a Matt? Yep. ESPN? Yep. I just kept saying yes the whole way throughout my career. And I played for 22 years professionally. So it was a long time. I didn't do a lot of television, but I did enough to know that I could do it. And then anytime I was asked, and I don't have an agent, which is very unusual for someone who is a tennis player and a TV personality, is that because I've also managed relationships really well, which is why I say to everyone out there, be nice to people, say yes, and do the work and do the job. And don't be afraid to do it and get to know people. If there's someone sitting next to you at a restaurant and you're by yourself, that person could change your life. So always say yes, always be good, always be kind to people, and then do the work and do the job. And you'll be surprised. For me, for example, at my age now, I've done television now for 15 years since I quit playing tennis, and I did a ton before that. And the coaching really came about really because there was one particular player, Karolina Pliskova was her name. She was former world number one. She liked my commentary. She liked what I had to say in commentary. So she's like, would you ever think about coaching me? And I said, yep. And I hadn't really had that. And she was one of the best players in the world. And a lot of people would have been like, no, I'm comfortable in this life. I'm comfortable doing this. I was like, can I coach one of the best players in the world? Yep. So you kind of have to have the chutzpah to be able to say yes. But also, if you really do believe in it and you have passion, you will be successful. But you have to say yes first.
Excellent. So in this path, like, as you were kind of chasing after I can't believe we call it afterlife. And wow, that person who said at 19, you're like, what's after this? I think that's
Yeah.
kind of shocking. What sort of training or preparation habits did you have to invest in, Rennae, to like keep being extremely strong professionally as an athlete, but at the same time, like, was it conflicting time and effort? Tell us a little bit more about how you navigated that.
Again, listening to experts in the field, particularly when I went into television and even with coaching, I would go and seek other coaches. What do you think? Tell me your thoughts. And then they would ask me my thoughts. Clearly, as a former player, some coaches didn't play in the biggest moments. They wanted to learn from me. I wanted to learn from them tactically, how to change something or what did you do to get better. So you always seek the best. Seek the best in your profession. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. And in television, for example, I've got a great new executive producer at ESPN. And he recently, and this doesn't happen in television, which is really unique. You're probably going to be shocked when you hear this. You don't get told why you suck. and you don't get told why you're fired. And I bet you there's some people out there going, yeah, sometimes I don't get the job. And I'm like, why? It's great to know. So if you're an executive out there as well, and you have people underneath you that you're like, oh, they just stink. Have you told them? And I'm sure you probably have. And there's some people like, yes, I told them all the time, and they just don't follow through. Well, maybe you're not telling them right. Maybe you're not being empathetic towards them. Maybe you're not saying to them, listen, when I was your age, this is what happened, and I did this as well. And that's, for me, is very valuable. I do like to tell my players, look, when I was 22, I did this. And my God, if I was you at 22 now, which you are, try and listen to at least some of what I'm saying, okay, and implement it, because it's only going to help you. Because at 32, you're going to be like, why didn't I listen? Right? So I think it's a combination, depending on where you are in the company. If you want more from your subordinates and the people that are underneath you, then you sit down with them. And I have a great new executive producer for the first time in 13 years has sat down and watched a tennis match with me and tried to make me understand where I can be better. And I cannot tell you, as a former player who had coaches, I want to learn. I want to be better at my job, right? And so if you want to be better at your job, and you maybe have a boss that doesn't really tell you stuff, if you feel like they're willing to help and want to get better, go and ask them, is there something that you know that I could be better at? Don't be afraid to ask that question. And if you're the boss and you want somebody to be better, maybe think, have I been constructive in my criticism? Have I told them how good they can be? And I think that's really important. It's really important to say, if you really truly believe this person can be CMO, COO, CEO, managing a project that you tell them that. But you tell them, to get there, you need to do X and O. And when I see that, then I know you're ready for that. And sometimes just telling someone that they can be better, because their subconscious mind and conscious minds aren't together, you're the subconscious mind that can get them there. And so it depends on where you are, depends on yourself, what ladder of the company you're at. But for me, it's about being truly honest, and it's about being able to listen, and then also ask the question. And empathy, be empathetic when you do it.
Yeah. Natalie has a different take and a different question here. Rennae, what do you do to relax and recharge yourself after an absolute intensive work period?
Yeah, well, obviously in tennis, we lost, we got on a plane and we left wherever we were. I mean, it's simple things like, as a joke, I was 17 playing in Italy, and recently I'm like, oh, I'd really like to go to Puglia, everyone's, Puglia, it's beautiful. And I was like, yeah, I've never been. And then I started looking at Airbnbs in Puglia, and I was like, oh, wait, I've been there. I've been to all of those places. But because I didn't leave the courts and the hotel, I didn't even really care where I was. And so, sometimes it's about recognizing how lucky you are, where you are, taking in your environment. For me, I love to ski. And I did do that every year, which was really stupid as a tennis player, because I was kind of learning throughout my career. But I was like, you know what? It makes me happy. So you have to choose something that makes you happy. You have to choose something. And now I'm a good skier, so it was kind of worth it. But a bit dumb. Some players and athletes have clauses in their contracts that they can't do things like that. So that's a bummer for them. But the bottom line is, for me, I just I try and have passion for whatever I'm doing, and I tried to get away, and great friends, and also not take life too seriously. I think that's the key. And obviously in a high pressure situation, and try not to ruminate over the losses too much, because if I could tell my 20-year-old self one thing, it would probably be that.
Excellent. Rennae, I have one more question to ask you, but it's also time to get feedback from this audience. So, Blake, if you could just move over to the QR code section, and then I have a couple juicy questions to ask Rennae. But actually, before that, maybe we all take a picture, because I don't know about y'all, but I want to remember this event. So everyone come off like your video, come on, turn on your videos. And Blake, if you could just get the screen off a little bit, I'd love to take a picture and kick off like 2025. And let me get everyone. There we go. Got it. Amazing. Excellent. Thank you so much. And then we'll get the QR code on. Again, sidebar team, it's super important for us to get feedback. So please take your phones out. This is hopefully the only moment you need your phone out. Get the QR code on. and please give us feedback. And then I have well, there was a nice controversial question in the Zoom chat that I just held off on. I might be not saying this name right, but Joel had a very, very important question. The question is, do you think Kyrgios is good for tennis? Rennae, this is hot news. So yes,
Oh,
I'd love to get your point of view, and then we'll head over to the last lightning round questions that I had for you.
well, to answer your question, yes, I think in the end he is great for tennis because, as we all know, and some of you maybe work in advertising or whatever, news and headlines are always good because it brings people to the sport and it makes people go, what is this guy saying? What is he doing? And then you realize he's actually a really good tennis player and he's very
Right.
entertaining. There is things that as a PR agent, I would want to kill myself if I was working with Kyrgios because he's a PR nightmare. But at the same time, his tennis and he galvanizes the crowd as well. They have so much fun when they watch him because he is entertaining. Sometimes I wish he had a filter that was a little bit bigger to be able to stop some of the controversial things that he says coming out of his mouth. Like currently, he's getting on Yannick Sinner in particular about the drug suspension, yada yada yada. At some point, you got to let it go and let your racket do the talking. But is he good for tennis? Yes. I just wish a little less of this.
Well, I mean, this is like hot news as of like 8 hours ago. So someone's tracking tennis news, I can tell in this group. All right, Rennae, I had one other question for you. As someone who's seen tennis evolve so much from the early 90s to now, what do you think is the biggest change that casual fans, like at least me, would not notice from the outside?
Well, this is important for all of you in any day life, really. And why is everything changing so quickly? In the end, it's working harder. It's being more present. It's the physicality of tennis is off the charts now. And life is harder in the world of business. It's getting more competitive, and the same in tennis. And so if you want to be good in this sport now, you have to move better than everybody. You have to hit the ball bigger than everybody else. You have to be more creative than some people. You have to be able to handle your nerves. You have to be able to detach from the outcome. All the things that we've talked about today, those players are great at that. And they are constantly looking to get better and better and better. And so I just think the quality of tennis and sports in general has just gotten better and better. And tennis to me, if anything, has the improvement in 20 years is outstanding. But it's more about the physicality. And so therefore you got to be in the gym more, you got to be on the court more, and you've got to have all your T's crossed and your I's dotted. And if you don't, you're not going to be the best player in the world.
All right. What's the most surprising thing about commentating that fans like us on TV don't get to see?
Um, we use the mute button a lot because there's a lot of times where we get into conversations and some people have been fired over controversial things being said. So you've really got to watch what you say. And I think the bottom line is you have to be prepared and you have to be willing. In my opinion, a great commentator is somebody who's willing to really not pull back, but to be honest. And they may be wrong, but I think the thing that we don't see is the preparation that goes and the stuff we have to watch on a consistent basis and the hours that commentators do. And I always say to tennis players, play as long as you can because you're going to make way more money playing. And you think TV's easy, but the hours that we spend at the tennis courts or the baseball field or whatever, it's a lot. It's a lot of research and a lot of work, and it's a lot of hours, and sometimes
Yeah.
late nights, especially in tennis.
Yeah. And plus, I mean, there's so many analogies between like just using the mute button and just keeping your composure and remaining calm and
Yes,
not saying the thing because you have to say the thing. So
right. Yeah.
that's excellent. Last but not the least, but I do want to put in a quick reminder for everyone. If you've not already given us feedback, please go ahead and do that. But Rennae, I've been waiting to ask you this question. Between playing tennis professionally and or let's say Wimbledon and commentating there, which one gives you more nerves and why?
Oh, commentating at Wimbledon is just a joy. I have no nerves doing that at all. I'm just so
Right.
happy. I'm like a kid in a candy store, or a kid going to Legoland. I mean, I'm just so pumped to be there. Playing was always nerve-wracking. It's the one thing that tennis players or professional athletes or anyone in a very stressful environment don't miss is waking up being nervous. It's waking up not being able to eat that meal that you're like, oh, I don't know if I can do. I don't know if I can eat today. I'm so nervous. Like that's the one area that I don't miss. And also the preparation, just like the constant preparation every day, doing the same thing over and over and preparing. But if you
Yeah.
want to be great at something, that's what you have to do. So if I can impart one thing, it's, all the things that we've talked about today. And if you want to be great, you have to invest in those things. And if you do, you'll get the reward and the benefits out of it. So for me, commentating is a piece of cake. Playing was a lot more difficult,
Mhm.
but the reward was much better.
Okay, and then leave us with one tip, especially from your like doubles career where you had to work with a teammate or a partner. What was the biggest unlock for you to figure out how you can play together versus just play against each other?
Take ownership. Take ownership in what you're doing. And that's why I say if you're working on a team or if you're working in a company, maybe your boss, you know, maybe your boss decided it wasn't good enough or whatever. But bottom line is, which is why I spoke about at the beginning about, finding your default, the toxic behavior that you do. If you've done all the right things, if you've prepared the right way, if you've done the work, if you've done all of that and someone says no, it's in the end, you have to let go. But, but take ownership and know, was it because of my default toxic behavior? Was it because I didn't prepare? Was it because I was lazy? Was it because I reacted a certain way? And take ownership. And it's the same on a doubles court. You can blame your partner. I could have played the best match of my life and they could have lost. Maybe I could have been more empathetic. Maybe I could have helped them along a little bit. But in the end, don't regret. That's the biggest thing. No, don't wake up and say, I did my very best. And that really is the basis of a success. Get better at something every day and don't be hard on yourself. Find the joy and life will be much, much better.
Amazing. What a way to end. I know we're just at the top of the hour. Rennae, I know I'm going to take into 2025 the three C's: composure, clarity, commitment. There we go. Thank you so much for helping us kick off 2025 here. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you here. I'm sure you're going to have an absolutely amazing time at Australian Open. Now I'm going to be turning on the TV and trying to watch you. Thank you, everyone, for your super engaging questions and have an amazing 2025 and like focus on getting better every day. Thank you so much, Rennae. It was such a pleasure to host you.
Thank you, everyone, and happy 2025 and just get better every single day at something.
Yes.
Appreciate you.
Bye. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.